Good afternoon and welcome to today's lunch break with the Rabbi. Today is Thursday, May 6, 2021. It is also Thursday, the 24th of Iyar, as we have our custom on Thursday to discuss the upcoming Torah reading of the week. The Torah reading of this coming week is a double Torah reading. It is Bahar and Bechukosai. So we'll have a little bit of a synopsis of what the Torah reading is about, and then move on to our thought for this week from this week's Torah reading. This week's Torah reading, as we mentioned, is a double Torah reading, beginning in the book of Bahar, which means mountain, telling us that all the Torahs, all the commandments that were given on Mount Sinai, and as the commentator explains to us, just as this commandment, the Torah says clearly was given on Mount Sinai, so too all commandments were given on Mount Sinai as they developed and were taught by Moses throughout the ages as the Jewish people were in the desert until his time of passing. Every single time, Moshe would continuously teach the Jewish people, review it with them, and transcribe the words of the Torah. From there, the Torah teaches us the laws pertaining to the sabbatical year. And the Torah tells us first that one must rest on the seventh year, and only then it tells us about the 6 years of working, teaching us and explaining to us that the way we are able to achieve our work during the week or during the 6 years of after the sabbatical year are only because of the blessing that we have on Shabbat. Shabbat blesses the entire week ahead. The sabbatical year blesses the entire 6 years ahead that allows them and gives them the opportunities to work and to be prosperous with God's blessing. The Torah then continues to tell us about the laws pertaining to the Jubilee year, where then all homes and people return home. A concept to remind us as people that we are just mortal, finite beings, and what we have is temporary, and it is in God's hands when we have something and when it's taken away, and where we have it and how we control it. Nobody should ever think that they are in control of their own destiny. We know that we are in the hands of God, and what we have and what we need to do is appreciate the very blessings that we have at any time. Then the Torah continues to tell us what laws pertaining to business, how one should behave in ethical and value system way, to not to cheat and not to steal and things of that nature. But then we come to the final Torah reading of the book of Leviticus, which is called the Parsha Bechukotai. And God states as follows: if in my statutes you will follow, and the Torah you will learn, and the mitzvahs you will follow, then God will bless you with rain in its proper time, dew in its time, and everything that you will have, and you'll be prosperous and wonderful. The obvious question that many ask is, why is it that God is giving us a promise of physical materialistic wealth as a reward for doing spiritual things? Isn't the utopia of everything spirituality? Which even makes it even more of a wondrous thing. Why is it that when we talk about the prophecies of the coming of Moshiach, which is meant to be the utopia of spirituality, one of the things that the Talmud and the Torah talk about is that it will be a time where even non-fruit trees will give fruit. There will be a bounty of prosperity and materialism. Why is that a blessing of spirituality? Shouldn't we be talking about only the utopia of spirituality? Shouldn't peace and tranquility be something of obvious? And the Hasidic commentators explain and say that in fact they're all one of the same. In Judaism, we believe that the physical and the spiritual are all part and parcel of the same thing. In fact, ever since the Torah was given, the objective of man was to fuse physical and spiritual. The objective of the Torah is to fuse the physical and the spiritual. It is for that reason we take physical items and make it into spiritual entities, like parchment into a Torah, wool into a tzitzit, and so on. When do we see the final completion of our spiritual endeavors being transforming the physical? When do we see the material become actually absolute fused with spiritual? That's the time of the coming of Moshiach. That's the ultimate reward. The ultimate reward for an individual is to see that everything they've done in this world, that their Torah and mitzvahs has permeated every single fabric of society, that the actual materialistic world is now responding in kind. So the reward is not necessarily a reward, but an outcome of our product. Which brings us to our next point. There's a story told of the second Chabad Rebbe that once his father, the first Chabad Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, used to always read the Torah every single Shabbat in the synagogue. It was the Shabbat right before, a few weeks before the high holidays. We are in the book of Deuteronomy. We read about the consequences and the punishments that may occur to the Jewish people. And his father was not there that year for that Shabbat in the Yajna and in the synagogue. And somebody else read the Torah. And the young boy fainted while hearing the admonishments and the curses that were being read. When they revived him, they asked him, what happened? Why did you faint? So he says, when I heard those terrible things that are going to happen to the Jewish people, I fainted. 72 different types of admonishments and consequences and curses. How can I survive? So they asked him, don't you hear this every single year? Why only this year did you faint? So he says, because when my father reads it, I only hear blessings. What does that mean? What does it mean that when the first Chabad Rebbe read these same exact verses, all he heard was blessings? The Talmud tells us of a story where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who we just celebrated his time of passing, his yahrzeit on Lag BaOmer, once sent his son Rabbi Lazar to a great sage and asked him for a blessing. And he came back to his father complaining and said, you sent me there for a blessing, they cursed me. And his father explained to him the deeper meaning of that curse was truly indeed a blessing. Sometimes blessings are so great that they can't come in the form of a direct blessing. They have to come covered as a curse. So too in this week's Torah reading. When God was giving the Jewish people the consequences and Moshe was admonishing them and telling them of what may happen should they not behave and not follow God's wishes, God forbid. It seems like terrible atrocities if you read them at first glance. But what they are indeed are undercover blessings. The Torah is teaching us a very important lesson in life. There are many times in life that we encounter things that may seem like an atrocity, a tragedy, a travesty, and a terrible challenge, which we seem like we're being cursed and yelled at from every single angle and every single side. And what God wants us to do is dig deeper. Look further. Don't just accept things for the veneer. Don't just accept things the way they seem at the surface, but dig a little deeper. Find the blessing in everything in life, because God is only giving us blessings. God is only giving us good. It is only our dark glasses. It is our veneer. It's our purview. It's our way of seeing things, which is clouding it. Because when the Father reads something, you only hear blessings. God is our Father. He cares for us, gives us what we need. And even though at times it seems challenging and it seems like he's smacking us around, and unfortunately it seems all too often, we have to ask ourselves, what can we learn from this episode? How can we become stronger because of it? What kind of blessing is hidden beneath the veneer? Of course, we ask of God, God, give us all the blessings that are revealed and we see it in the revealed way. And that's the ultimate blessing. But sometimes we need such a deep blessing, such a hard blessing, such a blessing from such a high place to pull us out of the greatest schmutz, that it doesn't come direct. That we have to be able to circumvent it, and it has to come through something which seemingly on the outside seems difficult. But it is our job and our duty to find the blessing in everything that God gives us. It is our hope and prayer that we can see the revealed blessings in everything that God our Father gives us. And may we only experience happiness, joy, and prosperity in everything in life, and continue to experience revealed blessings until we will have that final revelation prophesied in this week's Torah reading, in the time when God will give that even the non-fruit-bearing trees will give fruit, meaning that even trees that don't seem like they have fruit, they seem like there's no blessing there, we will see the blessing in everything we have, in everything we do. May it be now. Amen. God bless you. Have a good Shabbos, a wonderful time. Looking forward to seeing you in person and seeing you next week, Lunch Break with the Rabbi at 1 p.m. All the best and a good Shabbos.